Does Pope Francis deny the existence of the devil? Stick around for the answer.
You're watching Reason and Theology Live, a show dedicated to charitable discussions, debates, interviews, commentary, and analysis. The show concentrates on theological topics, historical matters, and philosophical problems with content ranging from introductory material to in-depth examinations. And now, your host, Michael Lofton.
Hey, welcome back to Reason and Theology, everyone. Your host, Michael. The other day, I did a video asking the question, does Pope Francis deny the existence of hell? And I tackled that issue and showed that no, he does not deny the existence of hell. Yet still some people continue to insist, in spite of the evidence otherwise, that he does. Let me show you something to introduce more cognitive dissonance for those who want to say that Pope Francis denies the existence of hell, or maybe even denies the existence of the devil. Let's introduce something, throw a monkey into the wrench, and give some evidence that he believes otherwise. Going to share my screen here, and you will be able to see now an interview that he did April 2022 is when it was put up here on Vatican.va, called Hope Under Siege. Pope Francis in conversation with Lorena Bianchetti. I guess that's how you pronounce it. Bianchetti. I imagine it's probably Bianchetti. But take a look at this. Very interesting quotes. Let's start here with the Holy Father. He says, this is true. Evil is more seductive. Going back to the devil. Oh, wait, 1 second. Hold on. Start with this one. And here's what Lorena asks. And this is so because good and evil exist. You have often warned us about the way in which evil acts. You have told us that the devil presents himself in a good light. He flatters us. But in reality, evil wants our only defeat. Do not dialogue with the devil. And so I ask, precisely in light of what you have said, how can forms of mediation be found, forms of dialogue with a person, or at any rate with those persons who want and who pursue only the imposition of power? Here's what the Holy Father has to say in response to this question. When I say not to dialogue with the devil, it is because the devil is evil, lacking anything good. I mean, obviously, he recognizes his existence here with that kind of answer, but it continues. We say he's like absolute evil. He is the one who rebelled totally against God. But with those people who are sick, who have this disease of hatred, you speak, you dialogue, and Jesus conversed with many sinners, even with Judas up to the end as friend, always with tenderness, because of all of us have with the Lord's Spirit something good, and that he embedded within us. And when I'm in front of a person, and I always say, you always say this, we all say it differently. When we are in front of a person, we have to think about what to do to this person, to the evil or to the hidden, more good part. All of us want something good, everyone. This is truly the image of God in us. But we must never give up on a person, no, who ends up doing evil, and say, this person is condemned. A woman comes to mind who went to confession to the cure of Ars because her husband had thrown himself off a bridge. The cur listened to her crying. She said, "What am I most?" Or he said, "What am I most upset about is that he is in hell." I'm sorry, she said that. "What I am most upset about is that he is in hell." "Stop," he told her. "Between the bridge and the river is the mercy of God. God always tries to save us, even to the end, because he embedded something good in us. He placed it in Cain as well, Abel and Cain, but Cain did a violent deed. A war is carried out with his deed." Okay, so now you kind of see the context of the answer there, but it's clear he believes in the existence of the devil. We're not to dialogue with him. He's evil, lacking anything good. He's the one who totally rebelled against God. Very clearly, he believes in his existence, but he continues here more. He says, yes, this is true. Evil is more seductive. Going back to the devil, someone says that I speak too much about the devil. Notice the irony here. He's saying, people say that I talk too much about the devil. In other words, he recognizes that he does speak about the devil, and it happens often. And people offer criticism that he speaks too much about the devil. And that's kind of an odd thing to do if you deny the existence of hell, as some people claim. He does, which again I've already responded to in a previous stream. But once more, this is going to be this is going to introduce some cognitive dissonance to those who take that position that he denies the existence of hell, and they just continue to repeat that information over and over. I imagine this is very confusing to them whenever someone says that I speak too much of the devil, but he is real. He is real, he says. I believe in him. Some say, no, he's a myth. I don't go along with myths. I go along with reality. I believe it. He's saying, no, it's not the case that the devil is myth. He's real. I believe it. But he is seductive. Seduction always tries to enter promising something. If sins were ugly, if they didn't contain anything good, no one would sin. The devil presents something beautiful about the sin to you and leads you to sin. For example, those who create war, those who destroy the lives of the others, those who exploit people for work. The other day, I heard a family recounting that their father, still a young married man, had to work as an agricultural day laborer who would leave early in the morning and return in the evening, making very little, exploited by a company worth billions. This too is war. This too is destroying. It's not only tanks. This is destruction too. The devil is always after our destruction. Why? Because we are the image of God. Let's go back to the beginning, 3 p.m. Jesus dies alone, the most absolute solitude, abandoned even by God. Why have you abandoned me, he says. The most absolute solitude, because he wanted to descend even into the worst depths of our solitude to pull us out of it. He returns to the Father, but he first descends. He is in every exploited person, those who suffer war, those who suffer destruction, those who suffer trafficking. How many women are slaves of trafficking here in Rome and in the large cities? It is a work of evil. It is war. It is abundantly clear that he believes in the existence of devil. By the way, get ready. Get ready for the reactionary radical traditionalists. I think they've probably already done it, but they'll do it again here. Get ready for them to take this completely out of context, this part where he says, abandoned by God. Get ready for them to say, oh, Pope Francis denies the Trinity. Oh, Pope Francis believes there was a division within the Trinity. Get ready for them to exploit that. Watch. You'll see it. It's already either been done or it will be done. But what you won't see them do is say, hey, you know what? I need to offer a correction video. Well, I've done a video saying that Pope Francis denies the devil, or I've done a video saying he denies hell, but actually there's evidence to the contrary. Let me correct that information. You probably won't see that. James's interviews is in the chat. He says, nah, bro, keep coping. He's joking, of course, by the way. But no, I mean, that's how some people will respond. Put your questions there in the chat. Let me hear questions, comments. Make sure to put it to Reason and Theology. I got a few minutes here. I'll stick around for a little bit, but I wanted to sneak this one in. Simon says, I think it's actually quite beautifully said. Yeah. I mean, if I had just read this to you and I didn't tell you it was Pope Francis, you wouldn't have believed it was Pope Francis, would you have? Probably not. What does that say? Says maybe you have this impression about Pope Francis, right? But Michael, lightning struck the Vatican, Ramsey says. Yeah, right. But these things can always be interpreted in multiple ways, right? You could say, well, that was Satan, manipulating as the prince of the power of the air, manipulating the forces of the atmosphere with the power of God. I mean, with the allowance, I should say, of God, manipulating the forces of the air, because again, he's the prince and power of the air, striking the Vatican, showing that, and you can go on with it. Some people will point to the lightning striking the Vatican and say this proves that Catholicism is evil, right? There's a million ways that you can interpret this. You could say that it was God who struck the Vatican to show that, Pope Benedict's resignation was disproved or was not allowed by God, or wasn't valid, or was discouraged by God. Or you could read it as God struck the Vatican because he wants to show that Catholicism is wrong and Protestantism is true, or Islam is true. There's like a million ways you can interpret these kinds of things, which is why I think it's folly to spend time on that kind of stuff, because again, there's a million ways that you can interpret these kinds of signs. Isaac says, I keep getting deceived by rad trads and orthobros. I'm really struggling with Catholicism. Please pray for me. That's why I do this channel, partly, right? I mean, there's other reasons why I do this channel, because there's plenty of other content that I address. So it's not just dealing with orthobros and rad trads. I also want to reach Protestants and atheists and others. So there's other reasons why I do the channel, but addressing those two is also very important to me. So certainly check out my traditional Catholicism playlist or Eastern Orthodoxy playlist, and that will address a lot of the stuff that you see online. So certainly we'll pray for you, and I think that you should check out that content, because I think it will help with a lot of the stuff you're probably encountering. Okay, so yeah, thoughts on the claim John Paul II committed apostasy, heresy by praying in the midst of non-Christians. Yeah, in the midst of non-Christians, it's not wrong to pray in the midst of non-Christians. However, you could say that it's generally wrong to pray with a non-Christian. Now, obviously, there have been some prudential decisions that the church has made since the time of the Second Vatican Council when it comes to praying with Protestants specifically. But here we're talking about with Christians, but we're just kind of talking about separated brethren or Eastern Orthodox. So there's been more of an opening there, but I'm not aware of the Vatican opening up for praying with non-Christians. Again, praying around a non-Christian is one thing. Praying with, like we're joining in prayer together, that's something different. And I'm not familiar with the Vatican allowing for that. And I'm not familiar with John Paul II actually doing that. Assisi 86, for example, which I think was imprudent on his part, was not him praying with pagans. And he was very clear about that, even though still I think that there were some other issues with it that I think we could legitimately question and criticize respectfully. But that being said, he was very clear about that. Maybe also read Ratzinger and his commentary on the Assisi event, because he had his own Assisi, I think in 2002, by the way. So certainly check that out. St. Charbel says, thank you, Michael, for always bringing calm and nuance. Haters going to keep hating, keep feeding the Cain spirit in themselves. Their hatred deforms them physically and spiritually. Look, I think that it's very easy for people to get misled, especially if they're not trying to be patient and hear the other side. It's very easy for a person to get the wrong impression and be misinformed. So I think that's probably some of what's going on here. Did I get a chance to view the LifeSite video between Dr. Mazza and Henry Weston? Not that I recall. But I'm familiar with their positions, so I can imagine what that conversation would look like. But I don't recall seeing that specifically. If I have, it just slipped my mind. What do I think is the dumbest objection people have made against Francis? Absurd Scandal says, I think one of the worst arguments is the one where people rip out Amor Laetitia paragraph 297, where it talks about it's contrary to the gospel to condemn forever. And they rip that right out of the context of paragraph 296. I think that's probably one of the worst arguments. And I would be suspicious of anybody who does that. Let's see. Is this channel just responding to Pope Francis constantly? Responding to Pope Francis? I don't know if I'm responding to Pope Francis. I'm responding to criticisms about Pope Francis that are unfair because I've noticed the effects that it's having on people, and I recognize also that there's not a lot of people doing that. So I'm not sure what your question is, but if what you meant by the question is this channel just responding to Pope Francis accusers? That's one of the things that I do. If you look at the over 1,000 videos that I have in a little over 3 years, you'll see that I have plenty of content in other areas as well. Does the Holy Father teach that capital punishment was always immoral? Have you seen my videos, my 2 videos on the death penalty? Please take a look at those if you haven't seen them already. James Interview says, so the devil is in the details. That's one way to put it. Let's see. James says, thank you, Michael, for all that you do. Videos like these are just good little examples of critical thinking, which we need more of. That's the point. I appreciate it. What happens if the Pope is a heretic? Church history professor explains. Is that the Mazda? I guess the Mazda thing. Again, I haven't, not to my recollection, seen that. It was posted Friday, so no, I don't think I've seen that video. But I've done plenty of videos addressing not only Mazda's thesis, but the question of Pope in relation to heresy. So if there's something new that he addresses in the video, please let me know. But it seems like this has already kind of been addressed, here on this channel. So, but again, let me know if there was anything in there that's new that I haven't engaged. Have I been called a papolator yet? Something like that. Pope-splainer is the more common one. That tends to be the term that people use, rather than actually engaging what I say, of course. The name calling and stuff like that, instead of actually addressing the content. Well, I will let that speak for itself. I mean, if a person can't engage the content but can only resort to those kinds of insults, that tells you everything you need to know about the person. Taylor Marshall made a video on Pope Francis possibly calling Vatican III. That's one way to get views. Yeah. I haven't watched the video. I saw something come up in my feed, but I didn't watch it yet, so I can't comment specifically on anything he said in the video, because again, I would have to hear what he's saying, but I don't think that there is any chance that he's going to call Vatican III. Now, maybe Taylor Marshall was spinning that, and that was just clickbait, and he was saying something else in the video. Again, I don't know. So maybe he's not making that actual claim, but just going based on your comment, no, I don't think that Pope Francis is calling a Vatican III. I actually think that would be a really, really bad decision, because as I've said before, I don't know how you would have an ecumenical council in this day and age with social media, because we already had the Council of the Media problem with Vatican II back in the 60s. Can you imagine now with all the misinformation that goes around online? There would be 2 different councils, the real one and then the fake one, or the millions of fake ones that are reported on social media. That would lead to so much confusion. The only way to have an ecumenical council at this point is that you would have to keep all of the participants silent. They would have to go on silence, like no social media communication upon pains of excommunication, no communication about the council until its documents are promulgated. That's the only way that you could do a council these days without a massive amount of misinformation being spread. And even then, you're going to have misinformation spread. It would just be minimal compared to if there were live updates, and people from the council commenting on the council. It would be a nightmare. Not a good idea. But no, I don't think that there's going to be a Vatican III right now. Not until we get social media under control, should we have another ecumenical council. Why do you think that there's so much criticism of Francis, and is none of it well-founded? There's some legitimate criticism of Pope Francis, and I've tried to charitably offer that. So I wouldn't say that none of it is well-founded. Some of it is, but a lot of it is exaggerated. Some of it is misinformation. So that's my qualified response to you. Do you think a potential Vatican III will be awesome and faithful and loyal to God? As far as the council itself, or as far as, again, the result of it that you would get from all of the misinformation on social media? I mean, I think that the council itself would be, just because, again, I believe the promises that Christ made about the magisterium. So I believe that what's promulgated, won't deviate from the faith, but there would certainly be participants who deviate from the faith and go on social media and say things that deviates from the faith. And there would be plenty of people who misrepresent the council and indicate that it deviates from the faith when in fact it didn't. So again, it would be a terrible idea to try to have an ecumenical council right now unless there was complete media silence on part of the participants, which would be very hard to do. I mean, very hard to enforce that. Okay. Okay. A council now would actually be easier to defend, clearly, since we have have YouTube and the Pope can independently of everyone else clarify all things personally. Yeah, but look, you know how it goes. Misinformation travels a whole lot faster and wider than the truth and clarification. So I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that. People are going to want to hear controversy, and they're going to want to hear lies. And that's going to spread and impact people to a greater degree than the truth would. So no, I'd have to disagree with you on that one. Let's see. How do you manage hearing and responding to Pope slander? Does it ever take a toll on you? Hearing these things always brings me down, especially when it comes from fellow Catholics. Yeah, I mean, it's just a daily thing, and it's part of the apostolate. I mean, if you're going to be on YouTube, you can expect people to lie about you, slander you, misrepresent you. Again, if they're doing it to the Pope, they'll do it to you. Hearing the slander about the Pope and others, does it take a toll on me? Not to the point that it's going to change my course of direction with the channel. And in fact, whenever I see that, and I see people continuing to misrepresent the Pope or even myself, I'm that much more adamant about addressing it, because now I know I'm really touching on something that some people are very uncomfortable with. And I'm the kind of guy who doesn't back down from a fight. I'm the kind of guy that continues the issue to address the issue, and continues to bring it up. I'm kind of what's the word? I forget the word offhand, but they spoke of Socrates as the gadfly of Athens. He would constantly annoy everybody with his questions, and I'm that kind of guy. I'm going to constantly continue to address the things that people are uncomfortable addressing or don't want to hear, because I know they don't want to hear it. I'm that guy. I'll continue to do it. So, in fact, I don't think if it takes a toll on me, not in the direction that I would not continue to do what I'm doing. In fact, it would be the opposite. It lets me know that I need to continue to do this. Although I'll be obviously still addressing plenty of other things. Let's see. Do I know why the synodal process is being extended? I mean, there was less than 1 million participants worldwide. Kind of hard to say that that's really giving you a sense of the faithful. 1.3 billion Catholics, and you're maybe getting, if that number is accurate, I think it's accurate, maybe less than 1 million. Kind of hard to say that that's really giving you a good idea of what the sense of the faithful is. And certainly consulting the sense of the faithful is a valid way to, it's a valid locus of theology. Certainly a legitimate thing to do, but it's kind of hard to say that you're really getting that with the numbers that we've had. So I imagine that's probably why. I know some people have once again put their wild-eyed, evil conspiracy theory, rash judgment glasses on and have looked at this and said, "Oh, it's because the Pope isn't able to really push through his agenda with these kinds of numbers, so he's waiting around until he gets more support." Again, I know that you got those people who are doing that kind of stuff and saying those things. Again, I think that that's failing to use the judgment of charity. I think that that's being rash. And of course, what it's doing is it's saying, you know what, they're lying to us because they've told us why Pope Francis is extending this process. For them to say, no, that's not why. It's really because of this. They're accusing them of lying. So hard to do that unless you have evidence, that somebody's actually lying. And if you don't have strong evidence that they're lying, it would not only be spreading misinformation, it would also be to engage in sin to take that kind of interpretation. So, don't pay attention to those who are, again, stirring people up and saying, this is for other reasons. Do you think that bishops and clergy should start paying attention to Catholic social media and YouTube to get a good sense of the faithful on concerns and whatnot? Absolutely. Absolutely. It will also give them a better perspective on how many are in their ranks who are currently in dissent, either on the left or far right. And I'm not here using those in political terms. I'm using those in terms of radical traditionalists or, liberal modernists, as some people sometimes use the term, but I've often pointed out that they're not really using the term very accurately in many cases. Not in the historical sense of what modernism is. Thank you for your membership there, Ramses, by the way. Imagine social media when John the 22nd was Pope. Oh boy, 22nd was, you wrote 12th. I'm sorry, John the 12th. I was gonna say 22nd. That would have been interesting. Maybe you meant 22nd. And maybe you meant also John the 23rd because the one who called Vatican II. That would have been interesting too. Okay, are ER bound to assent with? Are we bound to assent with religious submission of intellect and will? To what? To what? To merely authentic teachings? Yes. Ramsey said he renewed his membership. I appreciate the support there. Since the Pope is head of over a billion people, any video he personally makes on YouTube will automatically have more traction than most other stuff. I have to disagree with you there. Again, there is plenty of content that Pope Francis has put out there, and yet you don't hear a whole lot about it. Again, controversy is what sells. Church gossip sells. Something that's negative sells. They're going to want it. People often are going to want to hear something that isn't true. I mean, they're not going to say, I know this isn't true, but they're often going to be more likely to spread something that is controversial rather than less controversial. Like, how many people who criticize the Pope did a video saying Pope Francis does believe the devil based on what we saw? Very few, I would imagine. Okay. Technically speaking, given the ecclesiology of Vatican II and the subsequent clarifying documents, wouldn't the insistence of a regular periodical synod to replace a Vatican III? Absolutely not. Synods are not the same as an ecumenical council, although you can speak of ecumenical councils as synods. Whenever we're talking about synods in the context of today, like the Synod on the Family or the Synod of the Bishops, Synod on Synodality, that's not in reference to ecumenical synods. So it's not the same thing. A synod is not that universal organ of the College of Bishops. It's not. So no, it would be to fundamentally confuse the difference between a synod as we are currently using the term versus the College of Bishops assembled in an ecumenical council. They're not the same. So no, synods as we're defining them today does not at all replace the College of Bishops gathered in an ecumenical council, unless we're going to equivocate on what we mean by synod. But that's obviously not what we mean today, like the ancient use of speaking of an ecumenical synod as in an ecumenical council. That's not what's being referred to when we speak of synodality today in the Catholic Church. Okay. You've been doubling down on the rad trads recently. Glad you noticed, Given, and I will continue to. Let's see. I see another Honorius question. So are we bound to assent to the judgment of the early church count? Your question's very confusing. I guess you mean we, bound to assent with religious submission of intellect and will to the judgment of the early church council that condemned Pope Honorius? You're referring to the Sixth Ecumenical Council? Seems like I've done multiple videos on Honorius. I know Eric Ibarra just did one. Maybe check out his video on Pope Honorius, because I think it's going to answer your question. The answer is going to be no, by the way. But he's going to go through the primary and secondary sources to demonstrate that. I just take a very slight different perspective than Eric, but it's so slightly different that I'm generally in agreement with his perspective. I would just have a slight difference with him on Pope Leo II's ratification of the Sixth Ecumenical Council, and some very minor points there. And I recognize that his interpretation is a legitimate interpretation. I just take a different interpretation on that point. But on the whole, it's like on the whole of what he's saying in that video, because I did get a chance to watch it coming back in town yesterday. I'm in general in agreement with what he presented. So just watch that instead of me reinventing the wheel here. I think that would be a lot more helpful for you. But again, short answer is, to answer your question, no. But the longer answer, go and check Eric Ibarra's video out that he just put on Honorius. We've had a lot of heaviness recently. I think it's finally time for a little more levity to lighten the mood. I hear you, Absurd Scandal. Okay, let's see. Thank you for the super sticker there. Zekadin, I guess is how you pronounce the screen handle there. Sensationalism sells. Yeah, church gossip, controversy, stuff like that. That's what sells. How do you deal with polemics within Christianity coming from all sides, Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Protestants? It's taken a toll on my faith. You'd have to get more specific than that, but I've done plenty of videos from all of these angles. Internal to Catholicism in the Traditional Catholicism playlist, Eastern Orthodoxy in the Eastern Orthodoxy playlist, Protestantism in the Answering Protestantism playlist. So certainly check out those playlists. Let's see. All right. I think that's it for questions that are related to this topic. I see some that aren't related. Y'all hold off until we do a live Ask Me Anything, and I'd be happy to answer stuff that isn't really related to the stream. But once again, thanks for watching, y'all. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and always, as I say, check me out, patreon.com/reason and theology if you want to support me. God bless. Oh wait, before you go, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting this channel. This is my primary means to provide for my family, and it also helps me to produce content like this video. If you would like to support me, become a patron by visiting patreon.com/reason and theology. You'll also get access to extra exclusive content when you become a patron. Lastly, hit that like button and the subscribe button, and be sure to leave a comment down below. God bless. Hey RNT fans, just a quick word about one of our sponsors, Verbum, an excellent Bible and theological software. Go to verbum.com/reason. You'll support what we're doing here at Reason and Theology. You'll also get 10% off any of the packages that you choose, along with 5 free extra books. Again, verbum.com/reason.